Hello and welcome to Facebook Live. I'm Jane King at the NASDAQ market site in Times Square for Small Cap Nation. And with me today, some folks from ImmunePharma. So we have CEO Daniel Tepper joining us today.
Nice to see you,
and
Jane.
Also Dr. Monica Lukey joining us today from ImmunePharma. And let's start off with talking about the recent announcement that was made of the immune oncology spinoff, Cytovia Oncology. What's the company strategy, the key pipeline assets for that? Dr. Tepper.
Sure. I think there's general recognition that ImmunePharma has a broad pipeline with several exciting drugs. We have made the decision to focus ImmunePharma, the public company, IMNP, which is listed on NASDAQ, on bertoluimab. We're at a turning point in the clinical development of bertoluimab. We have high confidence as the recruitment of patients accelerates. So we have high confidence on the 2 clinical trials that are ongoing, as well as potential new indications. So all the financing that we've announced recently and future financing in the public company will go to bertoluimab. Now, why create Cytovia? We've also reached a threshold in our oncology pipeline which justifies to get dedicated resources. Cyplin, recently got guidance from the FDA for pivotal overall survival study in remission maintenance of acute myeloid leukemia. That's an important milestone that will require substantial funding, and that will happen in Cytovia Oncology. Cytovia Oncology will get its dedicated financing, dedicated management team, and Cyplin will be the lead product.
Okay, and then also, what's the medical need in AML in the most promising drugs? The American Society of Hematology had some data. They recently met. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Sure. So last weekend, we were at the American Society of Hematology meeting in San Diego, had thousands of people from the U.S. and around the world. So acute myeloid leukemia, which is called AML, is the most frequent of the leukemias. It's close to 20,000 patients, new patients a year. Unfortunately, it's a very lethal disease. There's about 10,000 people dying just in the United States from AML. So there's a number of treatments available, but there's a huge medical need to help prolong life of those patients. Typically at the survival at 5 years is in the 20 to 30% range. So there's a number of drugs that are being developed, new drugs. I think we've heard about Vyxeos from Celator earlier this year, was a big feature at ASH as well. It's a drug that is used in induction treatment. So a larger number of patients on Vyxeos respond that are on standard of care. There's a number of new mechanisms that either target the genes or target specifically aspect of the disease, subgroup of the disease. Remission maintenance, there's much fewer options. There's no drugs approved currently. Celgene is developing a drug for specific subset of patients, and Seattle Genetics as well. But really, Cyplin is the one drug that has the most clinical experience in remission maintenance. So we really want to dedicate the resources to help prolong the lives of patients that have initially responded to treatment in AML.
And Dr. Lukey, what's a clinical trial experience with the Cyplin to date? What have you learned about that from the data that's led to EU approval?
So the clinical trials conducted with Cyplin were conducted by a previous company, Epicept. It was a phase 3 trial that was a pivotal study in patients with response already to chemotherapy after treatment. We have experience in that trial, but we also have a experience along the way in earlier studies, phase 2 studies, where we have a total of over 1,000 patients already treated with Cyplin. We know that the safety profile has been quite good for oncology drug. That's pretty unusual. We also know that we had the response that we had in that particular study, or that was gained in that particular study, was excellent. The study was powered for disease-free survival, and that endpoint was sufficient for the European regulatory authorities to approve the drug, and the drug is actually approved in 30 countries in Europe. That particular endpoint is not the endpoint that the United States regulatory authorities prefer. They prefer overall survival.
Okay.
So the data at that time was sufficient to have the drug on the market in Europe, and we need to do the work now to provide the endpoint that the United States health authorities prefer for evaluating chemo drugs.
Now, results of the European phase 4 were released in 2016. Is Sepline IL-2 a novel approach to precision immunotherapy?
So that particular study that you're referring to is a post-marketing study that was requested by the European regulatory authorities to provide additional data on Sepline. That post-marketing study showed the data was analyzed from that study. We were able to learn quite a bit about the different morphologies of the different patients. With AML, we were able to learn about different cell markers that might be used to prognostically identify patients most likely to respond. The data from that study actually showed that after one cycle of treatment, you might be able to test for particular cell markers and identify patients that will be responding to therapy, which that is definitely a precision type of therapy. Instead of continuing patients on indefinitely on treatment that they're unlikely to respond to, now we can see, did you have a response, did you not,
Right.
should you continue, should you not, which is a wonderful advancement.
Sure. And the FDA provided guidance for a pivotal OS study, phase 3 study with Sepline IL-2 in remission maintenance of AML. What is the expected design of that study?
We just recently had a scientific advisory board, which was held last weekend at the ASH meeting that Daniel mentioned we were at. We were privileged to have a group of about 9 key opinion leaders in the area who know this disease backwards and forwards. They reviewed our proposed study design and some of the elements of feedback that we received from the FDA so that we can better design the study moving forward. It'll be conducted in a global fashion in the United States as well as other countries. And I'll just mention also that the previous study, the pivotal design study that was conducted and approved in Europe, that study also had 1/3 of the patients in that study included patients from the United States. So I don't think we've actually said that before. So it's clear that we have data in the United States, in patients in the United States, and the response rates there were at least comparable, if not a little bit better than the global trial. This study coming up will also be conducted globally with patients in the United States, with many other countries as well. We'll have several hundred patients. We still have to do the statistical calculations, but it'll be several hundred patients who have responded to earlier treatment for AML and have had a complete response. And then our purpose will be to actually conduct a blinded study where we'll have active drug, which will be Sepline plus IL-2, low-dose IL-2, and we'll compare that to the use of low-dose IL-2 alone. The reason that we're doing that is because the FDA has said in the past to Epicept, and again now, that they're very keen on being able to discern what Sepline actually adds to the picture. And the only way to do that is to look at Sepline with IL-2 versus IL-2 alone. The study will be overseen by an independent data monitoring committee. We'll have an interim analysis whereby the committee can not only follow safety data along the way, but they'll be able to look at some particular efficacy endpoints, which we'll analyze at the period after 1 year to see if we have something that's particularly interesting or outstanding. The endpoint will be overall survival as requested by the agency. I mentioned that earlier, and it'll be at the point of 2 years. That's the primary endpoint for that study.
And the team has already invested a year, right, to better understand the potential of Sepline.
That's correct.
Right, so
Well, we've looked at the previous study that was conducted by Epicept in great detail and also looked at the phase 4 study. We've looked at the subtypes of patients in the study, the age groups, the age ranges, whether there's a preferential response in terms of age. We've looked at different morphologic categories. We've looked at different classifications of AML to see how they responded. We've looked at a wide variety of biomarkers. And in general, we're just trying to understand what happened in the previous study, who responded, who didn't respond, which are the patients that we should be concentrating on for the upcoming study, again, to make sure that we're delivering the right drug to the right patients, which is the idea.
And I think you've answered this, but all this helps you better understand the drug, what the likely outcome would be of this study.
Right. Yeah. Well, actually, when we looked at this data so carefully, now the primary endpoint, as I mentioned, of the European study was with leukemia-free survival, and we need overall survival. We do have data with overall survival in the initial study that was run, the initial pivotal study. However, the study wasn't powered for it. And it's very important that you size the study appropriately so you can very robustly identify whether you've had a response, which is statistically significant, meaning it can't happen just by chance. When we looked back at the data from the previously conducted study, we can determine a very high correlation between overall survival and between leukemia-free survival. So we have a very good feeling about our chances in terms of being able to come out with a positive study here.
Okay, and Dr. Tepper, how will the global study be financed?
I mean, obviously, it's a long study, it's an expensive study. So Cytovia Oncology will be fully capitalized on its own with institutional investors. There will be no dilution of the ImmunePharma shareholders. ImmunePharma will own a sizable share in Cytovia, but new capital will come to it. Additionally, as you can imagine, we're looking at different partnership opportunities, whether it's for development or commercialization, and we've made significant progress so that Cytovia Oncology, which is a late-stage company, will have the appropriate infrastructure for late-stage global development, as well as potentially commercialization. So I think more to come in coming weeks and months, but you'll see Cytovia Oncology emerge in the first quarter of 2017 as a global immuno-oncology development and commercialization company with a late-stage pipeline, and particularly with Cyplin.
And what would be the market opportunity?
Well, the market opportunity is significant. I think analysts expect over $200 million in sales of just Cyplin. As I said, it's only 20,000 patients in the United States. It's treated by a small number of physicians. It's a competitive space, but we feel that we have a very differentiated product in Cyplin. It's much better understood than it was understood 10 years ago. And clearly, immunotherapy, and Cyplin is immunotherapy in AML, is more prevalent today. It allows to leverage the immune system to treat a disease and to maintain patients longer. So there's great commercial potential. There's also great potential to prolong the life of patients with AML, which is, as I said, is a very severe disease where unfortunately too many patients die too early.
Yeah. Okay. Well, sounds like 2017 could be a real game-changing year for immune pharmaceuticals. So thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Tepper, CEO of ImmunePharma, for joining us today. Dr. Monica Lukey for explaining this and sharing. I know you guys have worked hard and put a lot of research into this. So we wish you the best next year.
Thanks very much, Jane.
And thank you as well for joining us on Small Cap Nation and Facebook Live. I'm Jane King at the NASDAQ Market site in Times Square. Have a great day.